morning, Year 5 and anyone else from Hanwell who has tuned in. Today on this quite grim Monday morning, I thought we all needed a pick-me-up. So when I looked on my bookshelf, I found an author who I used to love when my children were little, and when I very first started teaching and I had my first Year 3 class, and that's Anne Fine. Now some of you will remember Bill's New Frock, you'll have read that and laughed about it. It's also a stage show now, it's been made into, so that's always fun to see how these things go onto stage. But the one I'm going to read today is quite a short one and it's fairly silly, which I think is going to make us all have a chuckle today. And it's How to Cross the Road and Not Turn into a Pizza. Now, some of you are much more independent than the children in this story, so you will be able to find how funny they think about crossing the road. And one of the things I like as well about this is it's set in school, and I don't know about you, but I'm certainly missing being in school, and some of the stories and the way the children interact always makes me laugh. And you can see the pizza down there is not in fact a pizza, but I think it's a hedgehog. Oh dear. So the blurb on the back, which is so usually where I start when I'm picking a book, says, "Crossing the road safely is like anything else. You can learn how to do it. That's what Miss Talentino tells Simon and the rest of his class. And she even gives them a demonstration. But there's one thing different. When you get a question wrong in class, you're never going to end up as flat as a pizza." Lucky. On Monday, when Miss Talentino came into class, everyone was whispering, "Did you hear about Tom's brother?" "No, not his brother, his cousin, Harry." "No, Larry. At the school, big school, middle school, the middle school." "He was crossing the road." "No, he was taking a shortcut over a roundabout." "No, he was fetching his ball." And along came this giant lorry. "No, it was a yellow car, a motorbike." Anyway, he's in hospital, broken both his arms. "No, he broke his legs." So he gets better properly. He's been strapped down so he can't even move for 6 whole weeks. No, it was only 4 at the most. But then he's going to have to wear a corset or something. One of those scratchy, itchy things all summer long. And he'll miss sports day and playing the drums in the concert and the camping trip. And he'll miss his friends too, except for the ones who live close enough to visit. And he was lucky. Yeah, lucky. He was lucky. "Yes," said Miss Talentino, who was listening. "He was lucky." She thought for a moment and then she asked, "Who out of all of these people who is allowed to cross the road on their own?" Everyone put their hand up. "By themselves." Everyone put their hand down, except for Simon, who wasn't listening properly because he was looking ahead in the maths book. And this book is illustrated by Tony Ross from Horrid Henry. And you can see Simon there, he's still got his hand up. He's in a maths, he thinks he knows all the answers to maths, but maybe not, maybe the answers for crossing the road. "I said by themselves," she repeated. Simon's hand came down again. "I would," said Jason, "except my mum always says not this year, maybe next." "And I would," said Herbert, "except I'm not allowed yet." "I would," said Melissa, "except I'm always with my mum and my brother, and my brother's too young to cross the road." "And I might," said Felicia, "because my mum and dad said maybe when it gets to my birthday." She scowled horribly, but then again they said that last year and they didn't let me either. Said Miss Talentino. "Interesting, very interesting." And then she turned to write the date on the board. Shall we get started? Chapter Flat Trouble. Next morning, as soon as the lollipop lady had gone home for coffee, Miss Talentino told them all, "Put your jackets on again because I'm taking you out into the playground." "I don't want to go," said Simon. "Not for missing maths. Maths is the only thing I'm good at. And it's not fair we miss the only thing I'm good at by going out to play early." "We're not going out to play," said Miss Valentino. "We're going to do something special." And there's grumpy Simon there. I particularly like Miss Talentino's stripy tights. Maybe when we go back to school I'll have to invest in some. She led them into the playground and then went out through the gates and stood at the pavement while they peered out through the fence like monkeys. "This isn't maths," Simon grumbled loudly. "Try and be patient," said Miss Talentino, and looked out at the road in front of her. "Should I cross now?" she asked as traffic whizzed past. "No!" everyone shouted, except for Simon, who was still grumpy. And even he said yes, so quietly because he was trying to be patient. Miss Talentino waited for the road to be as empty as a desert in the day. After one lonely camel has passed by, Should I cross now? Yes! Shouted everyone, except for Sadie, who was cautious by nature, and even she said, maybe. Good. My mum says maybe's no good, said Felicia. Not when you're crossing roads. You can end up in big trouble on a maybe. Flat trouble, Arif giggled. Look! And he pointed in the road where there was a squash round a patch with little tufty bits sticking out at the edges. Can you see that? Bad luck, said Helena. Prickly pizza, said Arif, and they all stared at the hedgehog who'd crossed the road on a maybe. That could be me, said Simon gloomily. I'm useless at practically everything, except maths, so I'll be useless at road crossing too, just as soon as anyone lets me. And he scowled at Miss Talentino through the holes in the wire fence and added, which is why I'd much rather be back in the class doing maths, like we're supposed to, than out here staring at squashed hedgehogs. But because she'd said try and be patient, he said it very quietly. Reel and pretend. Miss Talentino said, can you all see me and are you all listening? And then she added, when our class did a little school play at Christmas, did we use a real snowman? No! Chirruped everyone. And when we did our display of how the planets move, on the sports day, on the open day, did we use real stars and real moons? No! And when we did how dinosaurs and how they lived, did we use a real velociraptor? No. Right, said Miss Talentino. From this morning, I'm going to save you from turning into pizzas. We're not going to use the real road. We're going to use a pretend one. Who has a stopwatch I can borrow? I'm going to have to sneeze. Oh, dear. I will go and wash my hands, but I'm going to keep it down there for the moment. Amber got hers off her wrist first and handed it through the hole in the fence. And you see, there's Amber there. She's poking her watch through the hole in the fence for Miss Talentino. Miss Talentino took it. Now, she said, I'm going to cross the road. Not walking, not running, not dawdling, just walking sensibly and briskly. She timed herself, and everyone whose watch could time things timed her too. I counted 5.5 seconds, called Miss Talentino. 6, said Serena. No time at all, said Callum, who hadn't managed to get his stopwatch part started. 5 seconds exactly, said Simon. And because everyone knew that Simon was so good at maths, they all agreed. Miss Talentino waited for a gap in the traffic and then crossed the road back again. 6 and a bit, said Serena. 18, said Callum. But this time he hadn't been able to make the stopwatch stop. Miss Talentino ignored both of them and stuck with Simon's 5. Then she called Josh out and stood him with his back against the fence. And you see how nervous he looks. Bethany and Georgina began tickling his ears through the little holes. Stop that, said Miss Talentino. This is important. Not as important as maths, grumbled Simon. But because he was still trying to be patient, he grumbled as quietly so she couldn't hear. Now, said Miss Talentino, walk from the fence safely to the barrier. It's 2 steps, Simon told her. Miss Talentino ignored him. Instead, she warned everyone, stopwatches ready? They all got set. Josh went from the fence to the barrier in 2 steps. See, Simon told her. Miss Talentino still ignored him. How long did it take? She asked the air around her. No time at all, said Callum, who'd not even managed to press the button on his stopwatch. 1/2 second, said Sadie. 3/4, said Simon, because as well as complaining, he'd been using his stopwatch properly. Miss Talentino said to Josh, do it again, but try and make it take 5 seconds. How? Shuffle. So this time, Josh shuffled. 6.25 seconds, said Simon. Too long. Try again. Take tiny steps. Josh stuck out his arms and made silly princess steps. You see him there. 8 seconds, Simon told him. Faster, please. This time, Josh took silly steps but left out the silly dancing. 5 seconds, Simon said. Perfect. Exactly the time it takes to cross the real road, said Miss Talentino. Then she sent Josh to stand back, touching the fence again. Right, she said. Cross your pretend pavement road when you think it would be safe to cross the real one. Josh watched the traffic flashing by. Gosh, it feels a bit different now when you've got that bike and that car whizzing past. Cars came past fast in one direction. Cars came fast in the other direction. 2 huge and noisy lorries rumbled by. Then a man on a motorcycle passed. Then another lorry swept by. Looks a bit different without the lollipop lady, said Josh. Doesn't it just, said Miss Talentino. Feeling a bit trembly, Josh had a think. "Now?" he asked. "I'm not saying anything," said Miss Talentino. "You're on your own." Everyone pressed their nose tighter against the fence and waited to see if Josh would make a terrible mistake and end up like a pizza. Josh took a giant step. "Now!" It took him exactly 5 seconds to cross the pretend road back to the safety barrier. Nothing whooshed past him in front on the real road, but just as he put his fingers on the barrier, a huge lorry came hurtling past. "Phew!" said Josh. "That was a bit close." And he looked at the hedgehog that went on a maybe. "Fancy another go?" said Miss Talentino. "Not really. I feel a bit trembly. Can somebody else have a go?" "Me!" shouted Felicia. So Josh went back in the playground behind the fence and Felicia came out onto the pavement. She practised the tiny shuffle steps until she got them right. Then she leaned back against the fence. Helena tickled her ears through the holes. "Don't distract me," said Felicia. "I'm thinking." She watched the traffic. It was horrible. It went on forever. Each time she thought she saw a little space, something came along to spoil it. And some things came along very fast. "Hurry up, I want to get my turn." "No," Sadie insisted. "Better safe than sorry, you mustn't hurry. My dad says it takes as long as it takes and sometimes it takes ages." "That's right, and my grandpa says it's much, much better to be 5 minutes late in this world than 5 minutes early into the next." "More than 5 minutes late," grumbled Anthea. "More like 5 years. "Shh!" everyone scolded Miss Talentino. But Miss Talentino stared at the clouds over her head as if she hadn't even been listening. Finally, just when they'd nearly grown beards, Felicia took tiny steps and nothing passed on the real road while she was doing it. "Yes, I would have got there safely." "My turn," said Anthea. She crossed the pretend road. She looked back over her shoulder and crossed it again. "Show off. You got an easy patch." "No bickering, please," said Miss Talentino. "Try and be grateful she's alive. Terence, your turn." Terence was good too. And Melissa. One by one, everyone was good. And then she called Simon. Now remember, poor Simon said he was good at everything in maths, but nothing else. Maths and velociraptors. Simon came out and stood on the back of the fence. "Good thing it's not a real road I'm going to try and cross," he said. "I'll probably end up like that hedgehog." And he stared at the prickly pizza on the tarmac. "You know your trouble," said Miss Talentino. "You think the only thing you're good at is maths. But maths sneaks its way into practically everything, even this. Crossing the road?" Miss Talentino sighed. "Who do you think was counting how long it was to cross? Me? Did you all get the same answer as Callum? No. Whose answers did we choose? Simon's. Right. And since you're on top so far, we'll do a tiny bit of maths. As you'll notice, some things on the real road come zipping past, some things come ambling past. They come at different speeds. But in the big book, they're called..." She took a big fancy breath and pulled her arms right out wide. "Velocity." "Velocity is the maths word for speed." Simon said it again, trying to remember. "Velocity." "Velociraptor, the dinosaur that gets and eats you real quick." "Not half. And since you're trying to keep up, some of the things on the road, some come down one way and some come the other way. In whichever way, it's called their line of approach." Their line of approach. And there's Miss Talentino trying to help him know that maths is somehow linked and he's going to be good at it. Miss Talentino pointed up in the air. "And since we're doing a bit of extended work here, I may as well mention that if a really bad-tempered seagull happened to decide to dive bomb you just at the exact time you're crossing the road, it would be his angle of approach. Wouldn't it just?" said Simon, doing an impression of a furious bird swooping. Miss Talentino patted his shoulder. "So try and think of it as a question in one of our maths tests, so you don't end up like a pizza." Simon stood with his back at the fence. He looked like a question in a maths book. He knew they could have a go at it. 3 times he didn't go, even though he was totally sure he could have done, and he was cross with himself afterwards. And then at last he went across the pretend road. 5 seconds exactly. Shuffle, shuffle. In the real world, nothing would have spattered him. Miss Talentino led everyone back to class. "Can we go home now and say we're okay to cross the road by ourselves?" "If you went home and said that you could divide perfectly because you'd got one easy sum right, do you think they'd believe you?" "Probably not," said Terence. Felicia agreed. "I bet my parents are like you. I bet they'll make me do it hundreds of times before they know that I can do it. Frillions, trillions." "There's no such things as frillions," said Simon. And because he was good at maths, as well as practising crossing busy roads, everyone believed him. Have a great Monday, everybody.